Thank you all for coming. I'm really excited that you guys are here. I got some really unique information I'm going to share with you that you may or may not already be aware of, but my perspective on this should probably give you a new perspective, and I'm really excited to share that with you. My name is Chris Palmasili. I'm the founder of Wholesome Elderly Care Homes. This is a picture of myself and my wife, Derica, she's sitting right over here, with our third son, Suramo. And next to us is our home that we lived in, where all three of our children were born in, by the way. So it has a great family energy there. And we decided to turn it into an RCFE. And the thing that really got us to thinking to open an RCFE was Derica's grandmother. She actually owned a couple of them up in Reno, Nevada. And every time we'd go visit her, she'd say, "You guys should open a home." And we're like, yeah, we'll do, maybe. But we thought about it, and one day we started getting really excited as we were talking about it, because we realized that we could do something very unique and special that is not really being done anywhere else, which is really based on how we live our lives and how we raise our children. We modeled our entire business and our care plan after it. So that got us really excited. 3 years later, here we are. We opened our first of many more to come. But an RCFE is really a solution to a problem. So what I want to do is take a step back and actually talk about the problem. What actually leads someone to move into an RCFE? And usually it's because they can no longer care for themselves, or the situation they're in, they can no longer stay in that situation. So what I want to talk about is some signs, or some, how do you know when they can no longer care for themselves? And basically, you just have to follow the signs. And it's pretty basic, pretty straightforward, but the challenge is recognizing the signs and then taking action on the signs. A lot of times these signs go unnoticed, or they even go ignored, which is when trouble starts. So how do you know, how do you see these signs? Well, let's say that you're going to go visit mom or dad or grandma, grandpa, Christmas dinner, everyone's coming over, and you walk into the home and you start to notice some things going a little cuckoo, right? The first thing you notice is maybe it's a little untidy. Well, if you knew this person to keep a tidy home, which people of that generation really did. I mean, my grandmother, she kept our house really clean because we didn't know when we were having guests over. There's always someone coming by, and we had snacks and we had the house clean. So if you go to the home and you're starting to notice that there's clothing everywhere and things are getting, they're just untidy, that could be a sign, especially if that person was never that way. Maybe you go in the kitchen and you want to help out with the cooking or getting the food ready, and you notice that when you pull a pot out, there's a shoe in the pot. And that doesn't belong there, obviously. So when you notice that items aren't where they belong, that could also be a sign as well. Damage, maybe you see broken glass somewhere on the floor that hasn't got picked up, or maybe you see cracks in the walls, or things that are broken around the house that shouldn't be that way, and it could have been because they knocked something over or bumped into something. And maybe you see burnt pots. This is common. Maybe you see pots that are burnt, or they have char marks inside because they left the pot on the stove, completely forgot they were cooking something. That happens quite a bit. Neglect. Maybe you're in the kitchen and you notice that there's food sitting on a plate that has mold all over it that's still there and it shouldn't be there. Or maybe you see really old expired food or products in the refrigerator that's smelling and they shouldn't be there anymore, and that's definitely a sign of neglect. Maybe their physical appearance. As you're sitting there with grandma or grandpa, mom, dad, whoever it is, or one of your clients, you notice that they have a sloppy appearance. Now, if they were not someone who had a sloppy appearance, I know people of that generation, they kept themselves pretty well. They had pride in their appearance. And if you notice that maybe their shirt is not buttoned up correctly, or maybe they're not wearing their sweater right, something along those lines, and that's not normal behavior for them, then that's definitely a sign you want to be looking for. Loss of balance. Maybe as you're sitting there at the table with your family and she or he gets up and you notice that they start doing this. They're walking and they're grabbing furniture, or they're grabbing walls, or maybe they're walking down the hallway, they're grabbing both walls. This is a sign that they're afraid that they're going to fall. And if that's the case, that's a huge sign, a huge red flag, because they're now fall risk. And you don't want to wait until they actually fall, because when they do, they break hips. It's just all a bad scenario, and That's when a person who's living on their own, they've been doing perfectly fine, next thing you know, they fall, their health really goes downhill after that because they no longer feel independent, so forth. So this is one of the big red signs you want to keep an eye out for. If they have burns or bruises on them, maybe they have burns on their arms because they're touching hot pots and they don't realize they're hot. Or maybe they have burns on their mouths because they've been eating really hot food, they've been starving all day, they're really hungry, they finally got their food ready, and they ate it so fast they didn't realize it was hot, or they just couldn't wait and they burned their mouths, or maybe they have bruises because they're bumping into things. So these are definitely signs if you're noticing burns or bruises on their body. Incontinence. Now, I'm sure all of you know what incontinence is. Okay, so basically they're no longer able to hold their bowels or their bladder. And this is something that's really hard for people of this generation to come to terms with. I remember when I was 10 years old and I stayed home from school sick, and I was at home with my grandmother, and it was just me and her. And this is the first time I discovered that she was incontinent. I didn't even know what it was, and it may have even been the first time she discovered it. But what happened was we were sitting there, I was watching TV, it was a nice sunny day, kind of like today, and she used to like to sit in the dining room and lay on the floor on her stomach and do the crossword puzzles in the newspaper. And I'm sitting there watching TV, and next thing I know is I hear a commotion just like this happening, which I got alerted because she doesn't move that fast. And I started hearing this, and next thing I know, it just went silent, and then I heard fluid dropping onto the newspaper. And I immediately thought, why is she pouring her drink on the newspaper? And then it stopped, and she kind of calmly walked off to the bathroom. And I went and looked at the newspaper. I saw it was all wet. And I didn't put it together until later and realized that she urinated on the newspaper. And my grandmother's the proudest, strongest person I know. She didn't tell anyone about this. It was just her and I that knew this for years. She didn't want to let anyone know. Even when she had accidents, she was in public, she didn't address it properly. And this is something that you, as the person responsible for your family or your client, has to step in and basically face with them and get them to remedy this or do something about it, basically. My grandma went for years with doing nothing about it, but she is now doing something about it. So ways to recognize incontinence is basically if you walk into the home and you smell urine, there's no cats and dogs there, that is definitely a sign of incontinence. If you see trails of fluid marks going from somewhere to the bathroom, dark spots in the carpet, that is a sign that they are trying to make it to the bathroom and not quite getting there. Cognitive impairment. So if they're becoming forgetful, maybe you tell them something and then they forgot what you said just a few minutes ago. However, people, I'm talking about short-term memory. People that have forgetfulness, early signs of dementia, they tend to remember things from years ago, but it's the recent things that they start forgetting. If you notice that happening, that could be a sign of early dementia. Also confusion. Let's say you're sitting there at the dinner table and you're telling a story and they're not quite keeping up. They look at you like, what's the point of this? And there's no real point. You're just kind of sharing your day or what happened with your kids at school today or something. They don't quite get it, or they pretend like they do, but you know they don't. These are early signs of dementia. So these are things that you want to really look for, because a person on dementia shouldn't be on their own anymore at all. A person with dementia. Are they performing tasks in the wrong order? So maybe they go to take a shower, they get their towel, they turn the water on, and then they get in the shower without removing their clothes. Things like this, or when they're cooking something, they're doing things in the wrong order. That's because the executive center in the brain is starting to go haywire. They're not quite they're not quite sure how to do things in the correct order anymore. These are definitely signs you want to keep an eye out for. Now, if they're taking medications and you notice any type of cognitive impairment and they're the ones managing that medication, you definitely want to step in, because if they overdose on something because they're not able to manage their medications, or if they're underdosing or they're doing something wrong with their medications, it could be dangerous. And one way you can notice this is, let's say they have a 7-day pill box, and you notice Monday is completely full, Tuesday is empty, but Wednesday has half the pills in it, Thursday has just a couple pills in it, and today's Friday. then they're not managing their medications properly. That means that they don't really take them as prescribed by the doctor, and you need to step in at that point. Now, the main thing about this is that you want to see the signs, number one. Now that you know pretty much the basic signs, you want to be aware of them when you see them, and you want to do something about it. I've met too many people and know too many people who ignore those signs, or they kind of put them off. They say, oh, it's not that bad yet, it's not that bad yet. And then next thing you know, mom or dad falls, or they get really sick, or something happens, and they waited till the last moment to do something about it, to take action, and they're paying the price for it in many ways, them and the person. So I'm talking kind of fast here, but do you have any questions? Any questions? Okay. So you've determined that mom or dad or grandma, grandpa, or your clients, they shouldn't be on their own anymore. You kind of know that now. What are your options?
I was just thinking maybe you should mention one of our residents that we have now that was living alone with his wife. And,
yeah, I'll tell you all about them. So what are your options? Well, there are lots of different options. There's more options than I'm going to talk about here, but I want to focus on the RCFE. There's in-home options, there's lots of different things you can do, but what we're going to talk about here is the RCFE, or Residential Care Facility for the Elderly. What is an RCFE? Well, Residential Care Facility for the Elderly is what it's called here in California. But we also know them as boarding care homes, as assisted living. But if you were to go to, let's say, Texas or Mississippi or something, and you say, I'm looking for an RCFE, they're not going to know what you're talking about, because that's a term that's exclusively used in California. That's what we refer to them as. But we commonly also say boarding care. I also loosely use that term. So boarding care, assisted living. One really important thing to mention about an RCFE is that we are not medical facilities. If your family or client needs 24-hour nursing, they cannot stay in an RCFE, because we're not a medical facility. We can and do work with nurses, but if they need care that's beyond our scope or beyond our ability, that we're licensed to do, then they can not stay with us. So basically, if your family or your client requires 24-hour nursing, they need to be in a SNF or something similar, an RCFE is not an option. We are licensed and regulated by the Department of Social Services. So basically, we filled out an application a couple years ago and went through big loops and holes and had interviews and inspections, and we finally got licensed. And now that we are licensed, we are still regulated on an annual basis, and we still have to keep updated and certified and so forth on a regular basis. So what is actually included when you move into an RCFE? What are you actually getting? What are they doing for you? I mentioned boarding care, so I'm going to talk about the board side of it and then the care side of it. Board meaning what do you get in the home, like what are you physically getting? Care being what are you receiving in terms of care. So the first thing you get is you get a furnished room, and that could be private, they get their own room, or it's shared with one other person. And that furnished room is per regulation, so per regulations we have to furnish the room to a certain degree. They also get housekeeping, meaning that they don't have to do any cleaning. They don't have to clean their room, they don't have to clean the walls, they don't have to clean the kitchen, they don't have to do anything that they don't want to do. They can do it, but they don't have to. They get all their laundry done. They don't have to wash their clothes or their sheets. They don't have to wash the curtains. My grandma used to always wash the curtains. That's something that they did back then, I don't know. They don't have to do any of that if they don't want to. They can though. They get 3 meals a day and they get snacks in between. We, by the way, provide incredibly delicious meals from scratch. I'm not going to brag, but. Utilities, they get all the basic utilities, so they don't have to go open a PG&E account or a SMUD account. All of that is taken care of. Now, some facilities, they don't provide things like cable or internet, but others do. We provide the works, but some they'll charge you for luxury, or I guess you could call it utilities, but all the basics, water, gas, and all that is included. So for the care, they get ADL assistance. Are you guys familiar with ADL? Do you know what ADLs are? Okay, so ADL stands for Activities of Daily Living. This is eating, bathing, dressing, grooming, toileting, walking. They get assistance with that. So if they need help getting dressed in the morning, they're going to get that. If they need help eating their food, if they need it chopped, things like that, all their ADLs are basically covered when they move in. They get medication management. That's one of the big things. They have someone actually manage their medications, make sure they're getting the right ones, and actually hand them to them. Now, we are able to administer them to some degree, but most of the time they need to be self-administered or something that the resident can take on their own. But medication management, yes, that's a big one. They get activities programs. Basically, we find out about what this person liked, what they did for a living, what kind of hobbies did they have, and we customize activities based on that so that they actually want to participate. They want to do more than just watch television or sit alone. We customize activity programs, and this is common. I know I'm talking about what we do, but this is common in all RCFEs. They get a personal care plan. This one's very big because people, when they have a lot of their needs, like with ADL assistance, what exactly do they need assistance with? Well, we sit down with them and we customize a plan based on what they need, and then we outline exactly how we're going to meet those needs, and then we meet the needs throughout their stay with us. And this plan is always being updated when the needs change, or at least annually it's being updated as the person, as their needs change. We create personal care plans. 24-hour supervision, this is huge. We have a resident now who was home alone, 87, home alone, and he didn't know that his plumbing or in his shower, he had work done. His wife had work done to the shower. He went to go take a shower. He's sitting on the chair. He turns the shower on and he gets blasted with cold water. He didn't realize the pressure was so strong and he fell backwards. Now when he fell, he broke his hip, and because he has such thin skin, he busted his skin all open. He was bleeding and there was no one else there. Can you guess how long he laid there? With cold water pouring on him, bleeding, how long he laid there? He laid there for 2 hours until his wife finally came home. And even when she came home, she had to call for help. Having someone there 24 hours a day is enormous. That's really going to give you as the family, or you as the person responsible, security, knowing that they're going to be watched after in case something happens. Schedule keeping. Whatever appointments they need made, whatever they've got going on in their lives, we're going to arrange those meetings. We're going to keep track of them. We're going to let them know that, hey, today's your big day for the doctor or something. We're going to get them ready. We're going to pack a lunch, and we're going to make sure that they have transportation. Everything's taken care of in terms of their schedule. Now, one thing that's really important to understand about RCFEs is they come in all different sizes. The first one would be the smallest, and that's what's known as the 6-bed, and that's what we have. We have a 6-bed facility. Anything beyond 6 beds is going to be a larger facility, and they could be something like an Eschaton or a Carlton, something that has hundreds of rooms. So they range in sizes, and it's really important that you understand this because most people, they're only really aware of the larger facilities. That's because smaller facilities don't have the budget to advertise as heavily as the larger ones do, so you don't really know about these. These are kind of tucked away, and it's word of mouth, really. And so when people think, I need to put mom in a home, they instantly think of these large facilities, and these are not the ones that I would recommend you start with, because we'll get into that. But we're going to do a little comparison here about the differences between a 6-bed and all the others, meaning the larger facilities. So the 6-bed is a family home. It's in a residential neighborhood just like we all live in. It's in a residential neighborhood. It's a home. The larger facility is more like a hospital or even like a hotel, a large resort of some sort, and it's in an industrial area or a commercial area. This is really important because when you go take mom or dad for a walk, do they want to walk in a neighborhood or do they want to walk where a bunch of traffic is? The 6-bed is most familiar. Most of us grew up in homes, and your mom or dad, they raised their entire family in a home, and they retired in a home, they bought their home, they did work on home. It's most familiar to them. Larger facilities are less familiar. I mean, unless they lived a lot of years in some kind of large facility, medical or non-medical, it's not familiar to them. In a 6-bed, they get more focused care, meaning that the caregiver to resident ratio is ridiculously high. So in a 6-bed, you're sharing 1 or 2 caregivers with up to 6 people. In a large facility, you're sharing that same caregiver with many people. So when you press the button to call for your caregiver in a large facility, they may not come for 10, 20, 15 minutes, up to an hour, depending on how busy they are. In our facility, they don't wait. Our residents are spoiled. They don't wait more than a minute. And they get lots of attention, and it's too much attention. They're spoiled. I'm joking, of course. Any questions so far?
Why don't they have ones that are smaller than 6-bed?
They do. You can have some that are licensed for 1 bed, but those are still considered 6-bed. 6-bed is kind of a unique niche within the industry. But yes, you can have 1-bed homes or 2-bed homes, 3-bed homes. You can have 7-bed homes, but once you get past 6, it's now a commercial property. It's a completely different entity, and licensing is done differently with just that 1 extra bedroom. Okay, so now that you've determined that they should be living in an RCFE, which type is right for your family or for your client? I mean, which one? The large facility, the small facility? Which one would be better suited for them? The way I see it is you want to look at their needs in terms of their care, their physical and health care, and you want to look at their personality. What kind of person were they? What kind of things did they like to do? Or what would be better suited for their personality? So going back to our comparison here, I'm just going to do some little comparisons in terms of what may be better suited for them. If they were more private in their life, if they were a little bit less social, not hermits or anything, but maybe they're a little bit less social, a 6-bed may be better for them. If they were highly social, I mean, they were butterflies just floating about, they would love a large facility. I mean, when I go to these large facilities and I see people there, they're just kind of floating around, they love it. But I also see at those facilities the private people, and they tend to just keep to themselves, slowly making their way up down the hallway. They don't talk, and they're not suited for those places, So depending on their level of social likes and dislikes in their life, they may be better suited for the smaller one or the bigger one. If their needs are more focused, meaning that they need more physical attention for their health or their care, or they just need more personal attention. Maybe they're the kind of person they just need someone to talk to, or they need someone who's paying attention to them. They're going to get that in a 6-bed more so than in a large facility. If they're really independent or they just need less care, they may do better in a larger facility, but that's not always the case. You'll find plenty of independent people in 6-beds. If they prefer the family setting, which most of them do, if they prefer the family home, the family neighborhoods, the family setting, they'll likely do better in a 6-bed. If they love what I call the cruise ship lifestyle, I don't know how many of you have been on a cruise ship, it's like anytime you want to eat, you just walk into the diner, activities going on, there's always things happening. That's what these large facilities are like. Have any of you ever been into an eschaton or something? Yes. They are like that to some degree. I would say that it's like a cruise ship or vacation lifestyle. Now, if this person went on cruises every year or twice a year and they just loved that, this may be better suited for them. Now, if they have a lower budget, 6-beds typically cost less, so they may be, kind of forced to go to a 6-bed in that case. And unfortunately, the large facilities cost a lot, depending on what they offer, and they could really get up there in price. So speaking about budget, how much does an RCFE actually cost? This is the big thing here, because a lot of people have misconceptions about this. And well, I hope that you guys, or they have a nest egg and they're willing to hand it over, because it is costly. I'm not going to lie about that, but what I will say is it's incredibly doable, and there are people that are doing it, and you may have to get creative. And that's one of the things that I'm going to do for you here today, is I'm going to show you creative ways to pay for living in an RCFE that you might not be aware of. So the cost of living in an RCFE, I like to stay within the range of between $2,500 and $6,000 a month. So there are homes that are below 25, and there are homes that are way above 6. But way above 6, in that case, you're just paying for luxury. Way below 25, don't even go there. Don't even look at the place. In between this price range, though, you'll get the most value for your dollar. So I recommend you would stay within this price range. But what does differentiate one home to the other? Why would one cost 25, the other cost 6? Well, location. You're obviously going to pay more for a home that's in Carmichael than you would in Del Paso Heights, right? The quality of the home. How does the home look? How much space does it have? How large is it? How well kept is it? Are the furnishings dated or are they old? Are the appliances old? How's the landscaping look? Things like that. Just like you would imagine, the quality of the home would affect the price. The quality of the care. Now, this is subjective. People who charge more, they tend to believe that they have better care. Now, that could be the case, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you won't get quality care at $2,500. It's just up to you to find that out. So this is subjective. You may have to visit many homes to determine the quality of care, but that does affect the price, the quality of care that they believe they offer, or you believe they offer. Now, this is important. You have all-inclusive, and then you have levels of care when it comes to price. So all-inclusive could basically mean, well, they're charging you $6,000 a month, but they're including everything. Whatever needs they have, it's all covered. Levels of care, on the other hand, could be, well, they start at $2,500. That's the base price. They're not going any lower. And that would be if they're completely independent. The resident is completely independent, doesn't need any help. But then, let's say that they do need help with bathing. Well, we're going to go up a level, $500. Well, next thing you know, they need help eating. Let's go up $500. So levels of care, that's how they go. There's pros and cons to both all-inclusive and levels of care. It's up to you to decide which one will be right for you. Now, before I get into this, do we have any questions? No questions? Okay.
Are you living in the home?
Us?
Yeah.
Yes, we just opened, so we are currently living in the caregiver's room, and we're in the process of opening our next home. And to us, this is really important. This was our home that we lived in for many years, but the next home we open, we're going to live in that as well because it injects a family energy into the home. When people walk into our house, whether they're placement agents, whether they're families, they immediately notice that this has a really good energy to it. And it's not just our kids running around and our son but they mention it to us. All of them have. Everyone who's been to our home, they mention this feels really nice here. It feels cozy and it feels, unexplainable sometimes. But yes, we do live in it, and we will live in every home we open. That's part of what makes us unique. So before you create a budget, it is incredibly important that you get the proper perspective on what you're getting for your money. Because in my opinion, what I notice is that people undervalue what they're actually getting when they pay or when they put their family into an RCFE. They create these budgets that are almost rude in a case, because a lot of people think that they can't afford to live in a home, so they create the smallest budget they can, but they expect someone who's providing massive service to take that budget. And it's really because they don't understand or don't fully appreciate what they're receiving. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually give you a comparison of our price versus if you were to go out and individually hire these services that we provide or that any RCFE provides. Now, what I mean by this is, okay, so in our home, we charge $4,500 a month. That breaks down to about $150 a day. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to compare all the services that I outlined earlier. How much would it cost if you were to actually go out and hire those yourself? And I actually did that. I did the research. I spoke with all the people. And in my area, I found all the cheapest prices. I went the cheapest now. For a furnished room, that's one of the things that you get in RCFE. The cheapest hotel in our area was $62. That's the closest thing I could think of to getting a furnished room in a kind of a shared living environment. You also get housekeeping. Who would you hire for housekeeping? You'd hire a maid, right? Well, the cheapest maid in our area was $25 an hour. Let's just say that you hired her for 1 hour a day to do all the cleaning and so forth. Laundry. While there are laundry services, the cheapest one in our area was $1.87 a pound with a 15-pound minimum. So basically they'll come pick up your laundry, wash it, and then bring it back. So 15-pound minimum times 187 was $27 per day, by the way. This is all per day. Meals, well, in any RCFE, or I won't say any RCFE, but in the 6 beds, you have a chef. You have a personal chef. We do have a menu that we designed with lots of care and lots of love, but it's changing all the time because residents, especially ones with dementia, their tastes change all the time. One day they love spaghetti, the next day they hate it and will throw it at you. And so we're always changing the food. They have personal chefs basically. We whip them up meals right there and then. So for you to hire a personal chef in our area, it would cost a minimum of $30 an hour. 3 meals a day, that's $90. That's not even including him going and buying the groceries. ADLs. To hire someone to do the ADLs, you'd get a caregiver. I was just speaking with David at Helping Hearts right near us. His cheapest caregiver starting price was $24 an hour. For 10 hours a day, which is what we offer for on-duty caregiving, it would be $240. And that would be the cheapest, or the starting rate for a caregiver in our area. For medication management, there are services where they come and they manage your medication, and they'll come in and they'll say, this is the medication you need to take right now, and so forth. The cheapest one that I found was $300 a month starting, which breaks down into $11 per day. And that's the low end of the scale. 300 is actually more like 500. To devise a personal care plan, I couldn't really figure out who I would hire to do that, so let's just use a doctor. Doctors do create care plans. They're not as extensive as one that an RCFE would create, and the doctor certainly isn't going to carry it out every day with the person. The resident would have to come in and have checkups to see if he's carrying it out. But that's the closest thing I could come up with, and if they have insurance, it's at no cost to them, or it's with a copay. But an activities plan, well, who would you hire to create an activities plan? I imagine you would hire a coach or some kind of activities leader. And let's just say we hired that person at minimum wage. We have around 3 hours or so of activities spread out through the day. Well, to hire him for 3 hours would be $31.50. Schedule keeping. Who would you hire to keep a schedule? A secretary, right? The cheapest secretary in our area was $12 an hour. Let's just say you hired her or him for 2 hours a day, $24. 24-hour supervision. Who would you hire to do that? Security guard, right? So a security guard at $15 an hour for 14 hours would be $157. Now, in this scenario, the caregiver is doing the security or the supervision for the first 10 hours of the day. Security guard would do it for the remaining hours of the day, which would be $157. As you guys can see, that without me adding that up, that looks like quite a lot, right? So if you were to go out and hire these services individually, you would pay $17,654 a month, which breaks down to $630 a day, which is ridiculous, right? That's a lot of money. And believe me, people do this. They go out and they pay for these individual services, and they rack them up because they think that they can't afford the RCFE, which is only $4,500 a month in our case. So as you can see, you would save $13,000 a month, give or take. And keep in mind, I used the cheapest examples. I used the absolute cheapest things I could find. You would save that much money if you were to go with an RCFE and not try to hire all those services individually. Questions again? I know that was a little much right there, maybe a little confusing, but my goal with that was to really give you an idea of how much value for your dollar you're getting in an RCFE with all of those saving on all those expenses.
Do you have an example of a personal care plan you developed?
I didn't bring one, but basically when I sit down with someone who's applying or wanting to play, or I should say applying, wanting to place their family with us, I find out as much as I can about what they need. I'll ask the person directly, I'll ask wherever they were discharged from. If they're discharged from the hospital, I'll ask the case manager. I'll ask whoever I can, what was this person needing in terms of care? And then I'll ask the family members, and we'll figure out exactly what, this is an actual form that I have to use that's provided by the Department of Social Services. And I'll outline what they need, and then I'll come up with a 60-day plan of how I'm going to meet those. And I'm going to make sure that I meet those needs, and who's going to be responsible for meeting those needs, me as the administrator or my staff. I'm going to make sure that those needs are being met within those 60 days, and if we met the needs and we're correcting whatever the issue was or something so forth, then we would take that off. Or maybe the need has grown and got worse or something, we would revisit it and reassess the situation and create a new care plan. But the care plan changes every year, minimum, or changes when they have new needs. So I don't have an example of here, but that's basically how it goes.
So for example, it might say, okay, medication management.
Yes.
All the items.
So for example, let's say that they have 10 pills they're taking, 3 of them in the morning, 4 of them in the evening, and then the rest at dinner time. I would outline that, and then I would say, okay, my response to that is I'm going to speak with my pharmacist, because when they move in with us, we use our own pharmacy. That's the way we do it. We don't want anyone else involved in the medications, because things can go wrong. We need to be in complete control. So I'll say, okay, my plan for this is that I'm going to, number one, I'm going to speak with our pharmacist and make sure that they divide those pills into morning, lunch, and dinner, or evening, however. That'll be the first step. The second step is I'm going to train my staff and let them know that they need to administer these pills and so forth. So things like that. That's basically how it would go. So we're going to talk about creating a budget. Now, when I first heard about the cost of living in an RCFE, I remember this day I was talking to my instructor during my administrator training, and I said, what? How do they afford that? $4,500, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $15,000, how do they afford that? And I didn't understand it then, but I completely understand it now, and my reaction to that was the same as I would say most people. So the reason why we react that way is because we think that we need to come up with new money, what I call new money. We think that we need to create money out of nowhere that needs to be a new source that we pay for grandma to live in the home. But that is not always the case. In fact, it's only something that you look at after you look at what I call the old money. Okay? And this is one of my favorite parts of doing this, is because I like to sit down with people and help them find ways to pay for living with us, or living in any RCFE. Really, if I'm helping them out, I like to find creative ways to do it. It puts my creative mind to work, and it really does a good deed for them. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you some ways of using old money. This is the first place you look, and I'm talking about anyone in the family, them directly, the family member, whoever it is, mom, dad, whoever, and all relatives. You want to look in their old money first, because if it's a collective effort, whoever's willing to contribute. The first thing is you get reclaimed money. When they're no longer living on their own, they don't need to pay their own bills in terms of living expenses, so that money automatically gets reclaimed and now put towards the RCFE. That's pretty, that's not a mystery, that's pretty basic, and that's something to consider, is that you will reclaim some money. Savings. The way you want to look at savings is you want to look at it as how many years can I purchase for grandma in the home? How many years can you're not actually going to pay up front, but how many years, if I were to pay up front, could I pay? But you don't want to use the number that you're moving them in with. You don't want to use, let's say, the $4,500 amount. You want to use what the maximum amount could be. Because yes, we move someone in at $4,500, and we're going to cover as much as we can with that, but eventually grandma's going to get old and she's going to start losing more and more abilities, and when her health gets to the point where she really needs a lot of care, the price has to go up for us to provide that care. That's the number you want to use, just to have a safe number. So when you're looking at the savings, let's say that let's say I tell you, okay, the maximum we'll ever charge you is $6,000. You take the $6,000 and you look at how much savings you guys have, and you can see how many years you can allocate with that savings. And then the money that's the difference between the 4,500 and 6,000, that's wiggle room. That could be used for providing clothes and things like that, and even extra years or additional years in the home. So that's how I look at savings. Those are also pretty common. Most people do look at the savings, but that's a way that you should look at it. How many years in advance can you pay? If they have a pension or they have a 401k, IRA, stocks, bonds, a pension could be still income they're receiving. 401 and things like this, paper investments that can be converted to cash, these are things that you definitely want to look at. Sometimes people don't look at this and they forget about it, or they don't think about it, or they don't want to do it. A lot of people that are in a situation of moving into a home, you know, initially, they're kind of hesitant. They had their mind made up, I'm going to use those stocks for this someday, and that day hasn't come yet. It's never going to come. They need to face the situation they're in now. So maybe it's time to convert those stocks to cash, or sell those bonds. So these are definitely sources of old money that need to be looked at. Unfortunately, insurance doesn't cover the cost of RCFE, most insurances. And a lot of people have the misconception that they do. That's probably the number one question I get. Does insurance cover it? No, it doesn't. But there is some that do. Long-term insurance is one of them, but that's something that you specifically said, I'm going to purchase long-term insurance, and you did that years ago. So if you do have long-term insurance, you're well aware of what you have. Life insurance, if there's a life insurance policy, that can be cashed out and converted to cash as well. So that's something you want to look at. Look at all the insurance that is available and see what you can convert to cash or what they will pay or cover in terms of the RCFE. This is my favorite one, home equity. Because the average person is not a real estate investor, they're not real estate savvy, they don't know that they can use home equity in creative ways. I happen to be really into real estate investing, and I know very creative ways to use home equity. For example, a reverse mortgage. You could take out a reverse mortgage if the wife still wants to live in the home, but the husband needs to go to an RCFE. Take out a reverse mortgage, pay for the home, pay for the RCFE. Wife can still live there. When she decides to move out and into the RCFE, sell the home, pay back the mortgage. There's so many creative ways to use home equity. I can't get into it all right now, but that's definitely something that if you were to sit down with me, I would find ways of using any properties that are owned in the family. If mom or dad own their home outright, they have equity. If they own other properties that they rented out, that's equity, and so forth. So let's talk about sources of new money. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of new money in terms of benefits and programs, but there are some. When it comes to new money, you really have to get creative as well. I know not everyone's going to go open a business or start, doing things like that, but there are ways of getting new money. For example, if the person is a veteran, there are VA benefits that they could sign up for, and that will cover about $1,300 or so of the monthly expense. It's not a lot, but it does help. So if they are a veteran, take advantage of that. There's a waiting list, of course, and there are people that you can work with in the VA that will help you through the entire process. This one here is something that's really not known about, even with the facilities, and that is the ALW program, which stands for the Assisted Living Waiver. Basically, if the person is on SSI and they don't have any of this, if they're on SSI, they don't have any assets, they're low income, they qualify for the ALW program. The ALW program is unique to Sacramento County and the surrounding areas. That's the only place it exists. And basically, they'll pay up to $6,000 for the monthly expense, which is more than enough. But like I said, they have to be low income and they have to need 24-hour nursing. Those are the two requirements. The third requirement is they can't have any assets that exceeds a certain dollar amount, so any of these would disqualify them. But not all facilities are licensed, or I should say, licensed to accept ALW residents. We are currently in the process of being accepted into the program so we can take these residents. But I would say a lot of the facilities don't even know about this program. But it is definitely something that if you have the family member that doesn't have much and they're on SSI, this is the route to go. The only downside is that it takes months to get accepted, even years. There's a long waiting list, but start now.
What does SSI stand for?
So supplemented Social Security income. I'm not quite. I don't recall it at the moment, but something about Social Security income.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then you said that they would need 24-hour nursing
They need.
or 24-hour care.
They need some sort or some degree of 24-hour care. This program was designed to get people out of SNFs that don't belong there. So let's say someone is really bad off. They need to be in a SNF, yes, but someone who's just kind of has some things, they're better suited for a home, an RCFE, than a SNF. So this is the city's effort to get people out of SNFs and into homes where they're better suited, and they supplement the monthly expense to do that. So yes, I'm just giving you the overview here. They need to be on SSI. They need to require skilled nursing. But you can you can Google Assisted Living Waiver Program, and you'll find out all about it. I even have someone that you can work with who will help you do the application, the entire process. I believe it's free. I'm not sure. I can give you her information as well if you need it. Now, this is something that is pretty common, family contributions. That's usually what people do is daughters, sons, nephews, and so forth. They'll contribute a little bit as best they can. In a lot of situations, it's not enough, and that's why I like to get creative with this. I like to take that family contribution and rather it go to us directly, it'd be better going to something like a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, or a loan or something like that to pay the minimum monthly, and that loan or the HELOC or something can pay for the RCFE. I know I might be confusing you, or I can't get into all of it, but family contributions are definitely a source of new money, and there are creative ways of using it rather than just putting it towards the monthly expense. Loans, like I said, you could get a loan. It's not the best solution, but it's definitely something you can consider. Like I said before, get the loan, and basically the loan, the entire amount of the loan is considered savings. And then you can allocate that money for how many years in advance can you pay. Then instead of paying back the loan with paying back the loan with the savings that you just got or the loan you just got, take the family contributions and pay the minimum of the loan. Does that make sense? So there are creative ways of doing it. I would definitely sit down with you if that's something you want to look into and find ways of coming up with the new money. Fundraisers. This is definitely something you want to look into. People raise thousands of dollars doing fundraisers. You can use Facebook to do a fundraiser. You can use websites like GoFundMe.com to raise money. You know, a grandma's home project that we're working on. And you don't have to do it once. You could do it every 6 months or every year. You can continue to do it, and you could get creative with it. You can look at grandma's estate and all the different neat things that she collected throughout her life, and if you can't sell those things, offer them in fundraisers. You know, there's so many different things you can do. It's really up to you to get creative and figure out ways of raising that money, and it can really help. You know, you can really get into the thousands. You just have to be willing to do it and take the time to do it. So, speaking of money, one of the things that we've done is we've created a family discount for all UC Davis employees. And we're excited about this because Derica was a longtime employee of UC Davis. If you go onto the UC Davis website, you'll see us there. You'll see it there. And basically, what we're offering is $100 off per month for the first 12 months if your family comes to stay with us. And it's structured this way because we invest in the long term. This is mom, dad moving in. It's a long-term thing. It's a big thing. And structuring it this way shows that we're in it for the long run, and we want to help you save money. The requirements are basically, they just need to be related to a current or retired employee of UC Davis. And they need to be 60 or older. I will mention that it can be used for yourself, and it also can be used for an unlimited amount of family members, just depending on how many rooms are available with us. So if you want to put mom, dad, uncle, grandma, whoever you want, you can get this discount for each one of them. It just really depends on the availability. Like I said, we are opening more homes. This is just the beginning for us. And you can reserve rooms because these rooms do go fast. If you are looking for an RCFE, and let's say it's a 1, 2 month, 3 month process, and you notice when you're looking for availability, you notice the same homes keep popping up for availability, there's a reason why. Because they have a high turnover rate and people keep going in and coming out. That's not a good home you want to look at. The homes that are really good, they never have openings. They rarely do, and when they do, they get filled fast. And you usually want to be on a waiting list, or you want to reserve the room. So that is something also you could do with us as we open homes. It is a lengthy process, but you could work with me and we can reserve the room for whenever you think mom or dad or your client, whoever it is down the road, is going to need a room. We can work together on that.
Is there a cost to like a deposit?
Yes, there would be, yes. And there are we can refund, and there's stipulations, I guess, yeah. So that would be it. Yeah, that would be it. I know that was a lot of information. I speak pretty quickly and I threw it all at you. I hope I made it right in time. I hope that you walk away out of this with a new perspective, especially on the money part, especially on the value that you get for your dollar. When you are ready to put mom or dad or whoever in the home, don't undervalue what you're getting for your money. It's really, really a lot of service you're getting. $150 a day, like I said, you're getting a lot for $150 a day. The next hotel that was the next up from the $62 in my area was $89. So just for the hotel room, $89 a night, and that's you're just getting a major value for your money. So, any questions?
How many staff members do you have to assist you guys?
Well, in a home in a six bed, you don't really need more than 2. Now, if it's a 24-hour staff, meaning that usually memory care homes that they have high-level dementia people that are wandering at night, so forth, they have 24-hour awake staff, and they'll usually have 1, 2, or 3 people there. But in a 6-bed like ours, where the residents they're a little bit more independent, then we would have a minimum of 1. But right now we have 3 that are going through shifts. But there's always at least 1 person there.
And how many bathrooms are in the house?
2. Per regulations, you have to have 1 bathroom per 6 residents and 1 shower per 10 people in the house. So if you have 6 residents and you have 4 staff or whatever, you have to have at least 1 shower. But we have 2 bathrooms, yes. Any house is going to have at least 2 bathrooms. They have to, yeah. So are we looking for family clients or just interested in the topic?
Interested in the topic. I think what if you have a person who
Mhm.
needs care but is resistant to it? We'll call it resistant.
That's all of them, basically. And one of the things that's one of the reasons we make the home inviting and more family-like is so important. We want them to walk into the home and instantly feel like they just walked back into their house when they, wherever they were living. So there are ways to do that. It's just kind of acclimating them to the process and to the environment. But I would work.
I'd also like to do a few meetings with the residents, so we'll come into their home and we'll sit and talk to them, make a friendship first, a relationship, and then start easing in that process.
Yeah, I personally or Derico go visit a couple of times and let them get used to us, and you'll know instantly if there's a connection between us. They hate us or they love us. It's one or the other. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, if you have any questions, you can stay after and we'll talk. I do grab one of our brochures, and you have all my contact information there. And if you want to schedule a tour or you want to sit down with me and talk about numbers, we could do that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.